Oh my God. Nothing is rare, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another video with Swaggle. You know, I've been doing this YouTube thing now for 3 years and covering different situations in the market, things going up, things going down, FOMO here, this book here, craziness, Taylor Swift, whatever the case is. But I gotta say, in the 3 years I've been doing this YouTube, I have never actually seen something quite like this. The doomsday scenario that every single collector in the collectible world talks about. Where, what if the entire print run or census or whatever you want to call it hit the market all at the same time? How bad would that tank the values of a rare collectible? Well, apparently 50%, because in this video, we need to talk about this very thing that happened. Spawn 306 hitting the market en masse, a rare book that apparently wasn't so rare. So in this video, I'm going to give you guys the full explanation, the full rundown, explain how we got to this point and what just happened last night with its sales on eBay. But of course, before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do one of those things. My, oh my, this is a crazy story we have here today. But let us get into this video. Now, this right here, if you guys don't know, is the Spawn 306 Neatherrealm Studios edition, a quote-unquote rare comic book variant for the Spawn character, of course, we know, done by Todd McFarlane. I apologize for the image quality. Let me jump over here really quick to show you guys a little clearer image of this book. And shout out to Brian McClay from Beyond Wednesdays, Red Hood, all the guys over there. They had been covering, various stages of this comic book and this situation. And I had considered doing videos on this before, but, I felt like there was enough sort of coverage going on. But last night, what we saw as far as it hitting the market and seemingly overnight changing the value of the comic made me want to do this video here today. But let me backtrack a little bit. So this right here was created specifically for a Mortal Kombat video game tournament that was supposed to take place in 2020, just before everything got locked down for COVID. As you can see, the publication date is March 1st of 2020. This book was supposed to be given out to all the attendees or some of the participants in that tournament, but because of lockdowns, because the tournament was actually canceled, they weren't actually able to give out this book like they had promoted, like they said that they were going to. They actually still did play the tournament, so basically only the video game players themselves actually got copies of this, which essentially created this idea that there were actually only 50 copies that were in existence of this particular comic book at that tournament, which were given out to, say, the players and maybe their plus one. So this right here became a kind of instantly infamous book, an exclusive variant that people were very, very interested in. And we had some pretty big, sticker prices for this thing, pretty big asking prices. Here you can see a bunch of $3,000, $3,500, $3,500, $3,500. And we actually did end up getting a sale for a 9.8. Don't look ahead, guys. At the $5,000 range in August of 2022, a 9.8 of this book hit the $5,000 mark, when everybody at that time thought that this was going to be a book that was only going to have like a census of essentially less than 50. I mean, 50 copies given to video game players, but how many were actually going to see, the 9.8 grade and actually make it to CGC? So a $5,000 purchase. Not too long after that, a few months later, we got another slash price of $4,500. So definitely, some big sales for this particular book. It does sort of beg the question, though, was that $5,000 purchase kind of manipulation? So that's when it all kind of started right there. You have this infamous book, this perfect situation, this canceling of COVID. All of a sudden it gets, all this hype around it. And then bam, a $5,000 sale. And all of a sudden it's an instant classic book. It's an instant grail overnight. But as things do, nothing is actually really rare. And slowly but surely, more of these books started to pop up in the market. Here in Key Collector, you can see in August 2022, there were only 7 graded copies. And then in March of 2023, it went to 17. And then in August of 2023, the next year, there were 46. So all of a sudden, this book that's supposed to have a print count of 50 all of a sudden has 46 graded copies out there on the census. What are the chances that the video game players who walked away with this book, the 50 copies, are all comic book collectors interested in sending their books into CGC? I mean, that would be a pretty high send to CGC rate for a book that only has 50 copies. And so this is when, a lot of people started to talk about, hey, this doesn't seem, all that rare. What is going on here? And then we had the editor-in-chief at Todd McFarlane Productions relay to Key Collector the following quote, and I will read it here for you guys, which I thought this was crazy. So this was a small event to begin with. Only a couple hundred issues were produced. It was canceled to the public, but it was still held in private for the players. What we were told was that there were less than 50 copies were distributed by the event organizers to the players and their plus one. The rest, along with all the other free swag, was trashed due to the cost of shipping it back to the MK offices. We have worked with them before, so there's no reason to believe that this was not the case. I know the guys on some Spawn groups are pretty relentless when it comes to rare Spawn issues. I know several of them reached out to the players themselves to get a copy. I think it would be fair to say that less than 50 copies exist out in the wild at this point. I hope that helps. So from the horse's mouth themselves, from the Todd McFarlane Productions offices, they stood by the fact that there was only going to be 50 copies out there and that the rest was trash. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is why Swaggle made a joke about taking a flamethrower to his extra copies, because apparently that was not the case. There were apparently a lot of copies that made it out of that tournament and into the hands of certain comic book dealers, like Bucky's Books Comics. Shout out to Bill, a great comic book dealer. I consider him a friend of mine. We were actually on a WonderCon panel together, and he actually came out and went full transparent, saying that he actually ended up with basically 100 copies of this Spawn 306 book. There you can see right there, all of the Spawn books. He said that he made a deal. In fact, let me actually have him speak for himself right here.
Real transparency on Spawn 306. I own 1/6 of the run. I made a deal about a month and a half ago, and I have 71 listings up on eBay today. You guys can do the math. That's kind of what the run is right there. All of these books are up under Bucky's Books, one word, on eBay. 99-cent auction. They range from fine to near mint. In fact, these are all near mint copies right here. And I got 9/9/8 out of what I called near mint. So some grading opportunities there. I hope you guys show up. Maybe get some cheap copies.
So there you have it, folks. 71 copies hitting eBay yesterday overnight. And let me backtrack a little bit, again, just to show you guys, this is a book that, again, sold for $5,000, went for a slash price of $4,500. At that point, it was so rare. It took months for the next sale. And then another one popped up on eBay earlier in August that went for $26.50. And then there was another one that went for $34.50. And then all of a sudden, you started to see more and more $2,000 sales, $2,000 sales, $2,000 sales. Well, with all this uncertainty about the book, the values were actually going down, especially off of that $5,000 price. But it was only as recently as a week ago that this book was still selling at that $1,700 price point, and even just on 820 of $1,450. Well, unfortunately for that person, they did not wait for this announcement because, ladies and gentlemen, play the Benny Hill music. Let me just show you all of the sales of this book when Bill put them on the market. This is just from yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. Just from yesterday, this book hits the market. Crazy amounts of sales, and there you have it right there. That whole page of eBay, $1 starts. And I gotta say, again, I've never seen anything quite like this situation. I mean, it is absolutely insane. Here you have a fine copy. So, the grades changed as the things went up, but you can literally see the numbers sort of go up throughout the day. 122 here, 133, 133.50, 141, 159, 170. The grades are getting a little bit better, and so the prices are going a little bit higher up. But the amount of book that hit the market yesterday is absolutely insane. And one of the things I want to specifically focus on were the graded sales that we actually had, because, there was a ton of raw copies going up for sale, and I'm sure that, a lot of those people are going to send it in for grading, but it's obviously the graded books themselves that are going to actually affect what we see printed on GPA, on Go Collect, on Cover Price, things like that. And you can see a lot of them hit the market, a 9.4 going for $410, a 9.8 going for $950, the first one to go. Remember, this was a book that somebody at one point bought for $5,000. And then as recently as a few days before this, someone paid $1,400. Then, after that, drops to $812. Then after that, drops to $803. Then after that, drops to $812 again, or goes back up to $812, $810, $830, $898, the last one at sale for yesterday's window. But instantly overnight, the book tanks by 50% in value, almost 50% in value, around 45%. But you guys know what I mean. And this is the craziest thing. The actual doomsday scenario actually played out. One of the things I think about, as in the comic book world, we talk about this all the time. I mean, I think about all the people out there that just sit on stacks and stacks of copies of things, right? Whether it be your Ultimate Fallout 4s that people have been hoarding, whether it be, your Chamber of Chills 19s that people have been stacking and hoarding, whether it be your X-Men ones that people are stacking and hoarding. I mean, we always joke about this possible situation of, can you imagine if people just had to liquidate the values or they had to liquidate the comics and get the value out of it today? They had to sell it. What would that actually do to the floor? Well, as you guys can see it would dramatically affect it. And that's what we saw with the Spawn book right there. It is an insane story. Who actually knows how many of this book actually exists, now? I mean, Bill obviously put 71 copies up on eBay right there. And who's to say that there isn't some other dealer that is also sitting on another 100 copies? One of the things in the footnotes on the Key Collector site is they talked about, this was a tournament designed for 1,000 people to witness it. Now, it's a little bit unclear to me if those 1,000 people were supposed to get the book, if it was given out to everybody that went, or if it was only designed to be given to the players and things like that. But essentially what that means to me is that there is the potential that 1,000 copies of this presumed 50 copy run, actually exist out there. Now, I assume some of them got thrown away, but as we clearly see, there are going to be people who are at that tournament that, walk away with short boxes for this. And this is one of the things that, I think the takeaway of the story that we all have to sort of remember. As much as we think we know about the census, as much as we think we know about pop counts and things like that, there's always the potential that you could find a whole bunch of these books or toys or figurines or sports cards or whatever the case is in some warehouse somewhere. And that can absolutely turn the market upside down overnight. There's always that potential. So it is really crazy to see that. And this is still an ever developing story. Spawn 306, the Neatherrealm edition, I think will always sort of be this, a cautionary tale, an interesting book. Starting back in COVID and now where it goes from here. We'll be curious to see if people actually still want to put their money in this thing. I mean, maybe this is, sort of that Black Swan event. This book is going to recover from here. $800 at the 9.8 level is in fact the floor value, but you saw how many raw copies were also being sold right there. Those ones are going to hit the market and, that again is going to turn the census upside down. But ultimately, I do feel kind of bad for the people that bought this book, a few months back, or maybe even as far back as, whatever it was, that initial $5,000 sale, because as you guys saw from some of those headlines, it was being promoted as one of the rarest Spawn variants that exists out there. And it had this whole story surrounding it. But that's why, if you're out there, you got to be careful with these things, right? You got to be careful with knowing what rare is. You got to wait. You got to use patience. You got to use, caution in these situations because, these things change. Markets change. People change or things pop up in the census. Things slip through the cracks. And you never really know how many copies are out there until you wait until all of the hype and FOMO has finally subsided. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. That was me kind of breaking down the Spawn 306 situation. Liquidated on the market last night. Absolutely insane. An instant evaporation of 50% fair market value. What do you guys think about this story? What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about, I know what you guys are thinking. I know what you guys are thinking. You guys are thinking like, a fool and his money are often parted. This is why you don't buy modern variants, da, 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 da. But guys, there are people who sit on a tremendous amount of key copies of Silver Age books, Bronze Age books, Golden Age books. They are out there. And all it takes is someone as crazy as Bill to just drop 30 copies, $1 start on the market, and instantly change the fair market value of that book. Nothing is rare. Floor values are only floor values until they're not. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. What do you guys think about this story? Absolutely insane if you ask me. Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. See y'all in the next one.